When copper golems were first added, I had only one question: can they build each other? And today I may have found a semi-automatic way to do this. I think you may be surprised. So let's sit back in Minecraft. It feels good being back on the preview edition of Minecraft. I've had this idea for a while now. I just want to see if we can try and make copper golems that build other copper golems. And I was going to be building this on a copy of my survival world, but I think it'd be easier if we go into my creative testing world. Now there's a good chance if you've seen any of my other videos, you'll probably recognize some thumbnail shots. This is actually the first time me showing off these builds. I think they're quite cool. Anyway, so I think the first thing I want to do is try and have it where place a copper there. You can see that this little guy appears on top and there's a chest underneath it. I want to try and separate this guy from the chest and have the chest kind of go this way and then have this guy go somewhere else. And so I've done this setup here where if we place that there, it creates the copper golem, and because we're on Bedrock Edition on the preview, we'll be able to move these chests, so we can grab that and pull it back and then push that out. And then this guy turns into a statue straight away, which is something I want to take advantage of, because when they're in this state, we can actually break them and then just collect them, and then we can easily move them around. Now I'm far from a redstone genius. I really am not very good at redstone, so let's see how much of a challenge this will be. I do know that if we have a redstone there, and then when this has a block in between, it then connects the redstone, because that's just how it works. It's powering the block and then it powers that. But we don't want it to power this one. We want it to power that one around there. So we could replace that with another repeater and then into a block, which then comes around and powers this. And then when we turn that into a golem, it then gets pulled back, and then we need to power that one. Okay, so then when that happens, we then need to have it where this will then activate, so we can have it on a delay using a repeater, and then, or in fact, we should probably just have it inverted, and then it comes up like that, and then connects to the piston. I think that could be right. Okay, so we place that there, and then place that there. Oh, perfect, look at that. And now if this guy moves out of the way, you can see that's just like a little conveyor belt. And then we need to try and get these guys out of the way somehow. And I imagine we could just punch a hole down there. So when we place one, they just... Oh, we need to try and have some blocks behind them. And then we place that there. And then they just fall down. And these guys don't actually take full damage. And then they solidify. Okay. So I do want these guys kind of like they're going down a pipe, and I imagine we can make that look quite cool using probably the copper grates. I do feel quite bad doing it to these guys because I do really like them, but we do something like that. It's kind of like just a big copper pipe. That actually looks quite a cool design, and then they can just fall straight into a copper sort of, just a copper chamber. So it's kind of something like that, and then we go back up the top, we can then just place that there, and then you'll see that they're all kind of just falling in here. I mean, that's cruel. That is such a small cage. We really need to make that bigger. And I feel a bit bad them just kind of going into, yeah, such a small cage like that. And then they solidify. And we need a piston to come and break them. This is kind of messed up. Something I have noticed just there. If we break this guy, because they're inside of a block, I don't imagine they'll turn into a statue. We try and push them around, or we just break where they're standing, I imagine that they'll then turn into statues. So yeah, they just kind of turn into a statue when they can. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, now, just from the get-go, this looks horrific. I don't imagine these guys feel pain. I hope not. But yeah, I believe if we power that, that should power everything, and it does. And then we'll do the same with this side. Then we'll just bring a redstone line around the back. And then that can be our crusher. And then we'll get some copper blocks just to try and make it look cool. And I will take this time, again, just to thank you all for getting the channel to 12,000 subscribers. I mean, that is crazy. Maybe not the best time to be thanking you whilst I'm making this kind of contraption, because there's something just, I feel like this is just inherently evil, but I'm trying not to be. And so then back up here, we can then just go back to placing in these guys, and you can see all the chests are just getting separated. These guys are just falling right down into the pit. They don't take full damage, which is nice. And then we've reached the piston push limit, and then these guys are down here, and you can see that some of them are already, yeah, they're turning into statues, which means we can then press that, and then all the statues get broken, some more appear. That's exactly what I was saying, where they can only turn into a statue when possible. We break that, then the more will turn into statues as soon as they can. Okay, that's really interesting. And then we can just collect them using hopper minecarts, because they can go through blocks. Don't know if you knew that. Let's tackle this problem first of all, and so we can try and get something where I think an observer could do the trick, where we've got an observer just kind of looking into that. In fact, that should be the piston right there. If we've got the observer facing there now, and then we bring it around and then connect it in there. If we were to break this, and then when we... Oh, what? Okay, so it turns out we need to try and do something like this, where we've got that there, and then this runs into it, and then that just stays where it is. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So now, if we were to place that guy there, yeah, you can see how it's just continuing to work. And if we look over in just a moment, you can see that they're now coming this way. Okay, that's really... Oh. Oh, that's weird. There, you can see they've got this kind of copper chest conveyor belt. I kind of want them to just kind of stack up nearby. So let's get some black stone. I feel like this kind of looks like an actual conveyor belt. And we just kind of bring it along like that. And then bring it along this way as well. And then to hide this, we can get this same sort of material. And in fact, you know what? We'll even take the material that I've made from this kind of abandoned warehouse. And then just sprinkle in the blocks down here. And then this just kind of hides all this redstone here. And now we need something. We need to try and get these chests down here, which should actually be just quite straightforward. I'm just going to place in a whole load more chests. And so now if we get the piston there, and in fact, we want this guy facing downwards. And if I break that, it should all update. Maybe not. And then we get the observer reading that there. And then we can just end up doing exactly what we've done on this side, but just going down the way. So again, we'll just start placing in some more. And you can see that they are now going down the way until we have reached the ground, which is great. And now we can just start pushing these guys into a humongous block. Okay, so now that we've got this here, we can then have it where the bottom layer is just going to be a whole lot of redstone dust. And you know what? To make it easier, we'll just do the fill command. And then the layer on top is just going to be a layer of observers. And then the final layer is just going to be a massive layer of pistons. And so now we can then, I think we want to run an observer here. And so now hopefully we press that. Nothing is happening. Why? And now I've somehow made a redstone loop. How have I managed? What is going on? You know what? I'm having a lot of problems with trying to get these pistons to move up. So I'm just going to leave it it's basically just like a big printer. And it's just going to create this huge flat plane of just copper chests. It's not quite a big block of copper chests like I was going for, but it should still work quite well. And so now we can just create a whole lot of copper golems. And then further down the conveyor belt, this should continue just to push them out. And then it's going to get to a certain point where it's then going to start pushing out the copper chests this way. That's so cool. I think every time we pulse this, it will then connect to this down here. So we're going to basically just have to create a big redstone wire, which then comes up and probably just connects, maybe not here because it's powered, or we could just unpower it and then just have it run straight like that. And then we want to have this on a delay as well, so that every time we press this, is that going to activate? Yes, it is. And then we do that, the copper golem then just falls. But oh, I think this should work despite what it sounds like. Okay, maybe that is not working at all. A little bit less of a delay. I think all we need is just a quick pulse. So I've placed an observer there reading that torch. And so now whenever that torch triggers is when it's just going to quickly break them. And I think that should be kind of what we need. You know what? It's getting very busy down there. So let's try and get a hopper minecart system in. And then that's just going to take all of the resources from down here. And you know what? I think it'd be really cool. We have it where the copper golems actually get put back in their chest. So if we get some minecart rails and then we just power that on the top. And for that, I think we'll just use some wax trapdoors. We can have it kind of move around like that. We'll even have it covering up the hoppers as well. Then we get a whole lot of powered rails and it can just kind of be kind of like this. This is now all powered like that. And then we'll even do the same underneath it and the same underneath this one as well. We can bring these rails all the way up, then get it here, they turn, and so now we get a hopper minecart. There you go, and we place that there. It will then collect all of the there's bits of copper golem in there, and then it gets up here, then it's unpowered, so we need to repower this. We can just have that lever there, and so now we've got copper golems getting deposited into these chests. So now the copper golems actually get put into the chest that they were made from, which is actually just quite a unique design. And we'll come back up here, we'll place in some more copper golems. Yeah, they'll then get collected by that hopper minecart and then just simply pushed in to these chests. And it's weird, it looks as though when they get That's really weird. When items get placed, it kind of updates them all and they all turn into double chests. But we've kind of been doing this backwards because we've now got it like this, but we need to try and harvest the pumpkins. It's actually very, very easy to harvest pumpkins. We just kind of place in the seeds in this kind of pattern. And I am going to bone meal them just so we can see them a lot easier. And now this is where that whole idea of copper golems actually making other copper golems comes from. Because I want it to be where when these pumpkins grow up, they'll then get harvested and then the copper golems will then bring it up to the player, which is sitting up there. And so I think we can start getting in the rails for underneath here. You can actually see just how efficient this farm really is, considering this has only been built for not even that long and there's already pumpkins sitting up there. And then because the distance that a copper golem can go is quite short, I'm going to have this rail come up and then sit up here, and then it will deliver stuff to a copper golem, which is up here. And we don't want it to be too close. I think it might be an idea if we get a dropper and then it will just drop a pumpkin to the player. Or in fact, let's just have it run straight into a chest. And the reason why I've done that is so that the copper golem doesn't try and go for these copper chests. He's only going to be able to reach this one. So place that there. Let's get a copper golem out. And this guy can just stay up here. And then he's just going to move pumpkins from this chest to that chest. So I'm going to place in some pumpkins there. And then the likes of this rail, it can just start coming up. And then if we power everything down here, we can then get a hopper minecart. And I believe I'll just send that on its way. And so now it's just going to collect everything from underneath because it can reach through the blocks. And then it's going to reach the back. It will bounce back. And then it will go up this big tower here. And you can see it's now coming up. And then it's going to reach the top, go over, and then jump back down. And then it should have deposited some pumpkins, which it has. This guy's going to see that. And then he's going to take these. And then by the time that he's done that, this should be nearly on its way back up. And he should have deposited more pumpkins. So now this guy's just going to move the pumpkins over here. We can then just take the pumpkins, get our copper out and place that there. And it's not working. We need to try and have it where pumpkins can get placed down and then you can shear them. Because you can't do that with a dispenser, unfortunately. So I think this simple contraption could work where, it just simply powers it, but now it's a clock. So we need one of these again. Where are they? And you know what? When you shear the pumpkin, the seeds come out. Why don't we just have hoppers just lying around? And then, when the hopper picks up the item, then we can just say that's when it's gonna break the pumpkin. So it reads it there, it then comes up, and then it powers something. We could have it powering that. Is that gonna work? I don't think that will. Which then powers the repeater, which then powers up here, which we can then just use to power the entire piston. Okay, so that's actually working. That's working surprisingly well. It's looking like some of the pumpkins are getting picked up, which is fine. We can have it where we can just collect them very easily. Or we can have one of these guys collect them very easily. We can just have this guy. This guy's then going to come over, collect the carved pumpkins, and then leave the pumpkin seeds. Oh, never mind. He's Whoa, where are you going? You know what? We'll even have the seeds in here as well. In fact, why don't we just have the seeds in a separate chest? Probably right there. There you go. So now we can store the seeds here, and then we can take our pumpkins, start shearing them. That little system's actually working surprisingly well. I'm quite proud of this. It's not quite as automatic as I thought and hoped it would be. But yeah, if we get some copper stuff, we can then just come back up here, place that in like that. All of the copper golems are going to get separated, and then the chests go up here, and then I've actually got it so then the minecart is then going to trigger this, which then activates this thing here. I've just had better results with that. All of the copper golems then get shoved in these chests here, which I mean, in all fairness, is actually quite cool. And then this guy comes up, he collects the pumpkins, and then he moves around here and collects the pumpkins from in here. I don't think this is too bad. It's not quite copper golems building copper golems. If we could have it where the redstone could shear pumpkins, that would be great. If we could have a block which places other blocks, I mean, that would be a complete game changer. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. This is just me kind of messing around. Thank you very much.